it's not just answering what you've done, but also bring ideas to the table, showing that you're really thinking about the opportunities, the gaps, and being strategic in your thought process. Take it away from it being an interrogation. Again, make it a conversation. Speak future as if you're already a partner with that hiring manager. The creativity in the solutions driven type of follow up is stronger than just a standard follow up and finding out where do you sit in the process.
Welcome back to the 5 Minute Career Hack Podcast. I'm your host, Jamila Brown, and we have another incredible guest here for you today. His name is Orlando Haynes, and he's the host of the Career Talks podcast and has 20 plus years of experience in senior talent acquisition. So, we're going to get into more of what he does, but I want to start by asking a burning question that we keep getting from the audience, from our community. And then we can kind of get into a little bit about how you support your clients as well as what you do from a senior talent acquisition specialist, right? So, my first question for you today, Orlando, is what's the number one reason qualified candidates don't get hired? And how can they overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would probably tell you it's lack of preparedness. I think everyone looks good on paper, right? But when it comes to the interview process, to be able to sell your best proposition, your value, and how you can make impact in the organization, that's where a lot of candidates fall short. And so, again, this was a story that was told to me, or actually an experience I had when a manager told me, "Hey, I see you're looking for this new opportunity. You're looking to up into leadership, but everyone looks good on paper. Tell me why you're the candidate for the role." And so that's where the candidates now I think are falling short, is the ability again to kind of frame the storytelling while they can make an impact and what value they're bringing to the table.
So, what you're experiencing, and I'm sure you're hiring thousands of people, over the course of your career, you're saying they have to be prepared. So, tell us a little bit more about how a candidate can get prepared for, I'm assuming you're talking about the interview process or the hiring process as a whole.
Correct. So I would think one of the things that I did, I don't know if too many candidates are doing this now, is that one opportunity I had where I was going for a leadership role. So what I did was learn as much as about the organization as I can. I actually had a chance to speak with the recruiter, ask some detailed questions, so specific questions rather, and also extract information, which helped me put together like a 90-day plan. And so when I met with the VP, I understood what the gaps were already. And then I laid out what a 90-day strategy would look like if I came in and took the helm. Now, that doesn't mean everyone who's going for a role is going for a leadership role, but you can use the same principles in asking some detailed questions. So you can then build a framework to say, well, when I had the first conversation, the recruiter said XYZ. Is that true? Yes. And then start to maybe drip in a little bit of value of what you've done in closing the gap based on your experience in their job description, right? So it's not just answering what you've done, but also bring ideas to the table, showing that you're really thinking about the opportunities, the gaps, and being strategic in your thought process. So if you're able to do that, I think that's a great leg up to see they can almost really look at your methodology and how you think, and then you can start to add value drip by drip throughout the conversation.
So, I would characterize that as a real interview, as you just described it, because you're not just talking about the past, but you're talking about the future. And we're such
Correct.
visual creatures in how we think as well as what we see in front of us. So, how we think about things, we're also visualizing. So, what Orlando just said there was you're going to paint a picture of you already doing the role in the interview process with the hiring manager, right? And so, at that point, now this person, as they're hearing you speak, it's not about some other company that you did all these great things for. And of course, those things are important. That's what got you in the door. But I need to start to see you on my team. And I think that's such incredible advice. And I want to break that down, unpack that just a little bit more. So, what are some tactics for someone that's listening that may have never even heard this before? What could they do to forge that relationship o- and to pry that information out of that interview screen with the recruiter or whoever that might be so that they can get some inside information?
Yeah, it's another great question, Jamila. So I would tell them to be honest and transparent as possible with that recruiter. Ask questions like, what happened with the last few candidates that went before them? Why did they fail, or why wasn't they successful in the interview process? Is there anything you can share with me that I can prepare for? And so, because that recruiter wants that position filled, so they should be smart enough to say, okay, I'm gonna feed you some things that's going to help you prepare for, so you are prepared. Again, you look great on paper. That's why we're talking. You look great on paper. That's why I want to present you to the next step. But here's what's going to excel your process, or get you to the third step and the fourth step. So let me give you a few nuggets. Then, as the job seeker, making sure you're consuming those nuggets, and again, being strategic in how you answer those. Go into it and own the conversation. Take it away from it being an interrogation. Again, make it a conversation. Speak future as if you're already a partner with that hiring manager. And so answer the questions they're going to ask, but also throw in keywords like, so if we work together, some of the things I would like to do is, making sure we have a cadence of a weekly or bi-weekly meeting, so we strategize on some of the gaps that was brought up in this current conversation, as well as the conversation with the recruiter. And so I want to make sure that it's a team involvement, however you want to frame it, right? Whatever that gap is, but making sure you're talking as if you're already in the job, in the meeting, strategizing with that manager, because their brain is going to start to think like, whoa, so is this what it's like working with him or her? Wow, I can already see how Jamila's already taken ownership week one and want to understand all the gaps, loopholes, processes that's been done prior, or some things that she can bring to the table, find out what I'm thinking. And so that can cultivate an immediate relationship where that person may already feel as though you're in the role, and they get a sense of relief. There's an emotional connection that's going to come from that, believe it or not, for them to think, whoa, I can trust this person, because they're already taking action and thinking the same way of a problem solver. And that's what we need in this role.
That's so good, Orlando. That's so good. We think so much alike. It's why I love partnering with you on projects, especially here on this podcast and being on your show as well. I think I would really like to take the next step, right? So we talked about being prepared, and now we're starting to break that preparedness down. So in that first interview screen, the first conversation with the recruiter, you're going to dig for information, pry about what worked in this role before, what's the boss like, all that good stuff. You're going to get as much data, as much intel as possible. Okay, I've got the intel now, and I've got a week, maybe 2 weeks to prepare for my next step in the interview process. You mentioned developing a 90-day plan. What could that look like for someone with some information? If you can kind of talk us through what that might look like, the preparation once I get all the intel from the recruiter.
Yeah, so even if it's not a leadership role, if it's a individual contributor role, I think how you scope out that 90-day plan can look like from your past experience too, right? Especially if you're applying to a similar role. So if it's very similar in nature, you kind of know the mechanics of it already. And so I would say pull those and bring those into a plan, not necessarily as an absolute, but also as a, hey, I'm a alley oop this to you and see if you like it. Here's some things that I've done in the past, Mr. Manager. And I would look to kind of implement that if possible. Granted, this is the space, or the culture to do that. You're saying this is what I would like to do. Within my first week, I would like to meet all my team members, right? Within my first 90 or 30 days, is it possible to have meetings with all the departments that that might work with impact, and so I get a sense of what they look for, the type of communication presentations they look for, how do the work needs to be delivered. This way I get a sense, again, from all the people my work is going to touch. And then once you've done that, then this way you can now start to see, okay, now I see how the culture works. And again, culture is crucial for a lot of folks, but still culture can be different from one department to the next. So that's why I'd say, if you can do that within your first 30 days, meet the people who you're going to be impacting through your work. That's a great way to get a sense. One, it gives you high visibility very, very quickly. So you start to being looked at as that SME, right? That subject matter expert. And then you start to build that out. Now, you can think like that even before the interview, before you get into the role, etc. But those are things you can kind of talk through in the interview process to say, this is what my strategy would be This way I can hit the ground running, fully understand, fully start to take some things off your plate week by week. But I want to make sure, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, that we're meeting on a weekly basis to make sure I'm on track. This way you can start to peel back on some of the responsibility that's on your shoulder. So if you, again, you start to show that your level of partnership and ability to solve problems becomes heightened, again, you're what you're building is an advocate quickly on your side. And that manager would say, okay, hey, I got to have Jamila. Like, this is what we talked about. She already has a plan. Now, 90% of it may not be implemented, but the fact that she's coming with a plan lets me know she's thinking in the right way. We have to move her to the next step. We have to get her on board. What do we need to do? And so at that point, you're building advocacy in the organization based on your ability to say, I'm coming in as a partner, not just an employee. I'm coming in as a partner and a problem solver. And that's what these folks need.
So, question for you: how many years have you
Yeah,
done this? About 20 plus, right?
correct.
And inside of that 20 plus, how many people have you personally had to manage? How many? What's the max amount of people you've ever had to manage yourself?
Yeah, so the least, should I say, was about 3, the max was about 25, and that was
25.
across multiple states. Yeah, that was across multiple states where California, Atlanta, New York, we were launching in DC and all these places. This is a time while we're living in Las Vegas, so it was definitely a
Yeah,
bit different when you're managing across different time zones.
very different. So the reason I asked that question, number one, I want everyone that's listening or watching on YouTube to understand that this is 20 plus years of synthesized experience that you're getting in this episode. But I also want to make note of the fact that he's giving you the perspective from the individual, that from him being hired and some of the taxes that he used to get into positions that he's in. He's giving you the specifics from a recruiter standpoint and the hiring manager. And I think one of the things that's so important that you said there, and you also mentioned it when talking to the recruiter, you want to make their lives easier, right? If you're the best candidate, the recruiter's absolutely going to want to pass you along so they can get to their next requisition. Same thing with the hiring manager, right? They're going to want someone to take pressure off, come up with plans that they don't have to come up with, everything, and spoon feed an individual contributor. They want a leader, and reduce the amount of calls, complaints, or whatever it is in your industry that's a pain point for them. They want you to reduce that. So if you can figure out how to reduce those things, not only have you solved that boss's problem, your future boss's problem. So they're in, right? They're in. And as long as you're mentioning the client, the customer, what have you, as well as the organization, if you hit all three of those things, your boss, the client, and the organization, you've won in that interview process. And that's what I heard you say. And I kind of wanted to bring that together so nobody missed the three things that you're hitting in that interview process, because I think sometimes people leave the boss out, right?
Hmm.
So you cover what I'm going to do for the organization, what I'm going to do for these clients or customers or whoever we're servicing. And then you forget that you need to take something off that boss's shoulder, or at least see where they know, okay, I ain't going to have to worry about Orlando. Orlando's going to come on. I'll groom Orlando for next. That's how good he is. That's what you want them to
Exactly.
feel like in that interview process. And you said all of those things. So love that. And I want to kind of transition just a tinge, because you have an incredible podcast, the Career Talks podcast that I've appeared on, which is phenomenal. And you live stream that podcast on LinkedIn, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I think, is super cool. So if you're not already following Orlando, be sure to do that and tap into it. I think it's Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central. That sound about right?
6:30 Eastern time.
Eastern,
6:30
Eastern.
p.m. Eastern time. Yep.
Okay. All right. 6:30 Eastern time. So if you're not already plugged into that, be sure to tap into that. The guests that he has on there come from all industries, all levels. You'll find something for you that'll change your life. So I want to make sure I mention that. But I want to talk about this framework in relationship to your coaching clients. Right. So if you had to throw a number out there about how many people have you helped with the exact process that you just outlined, from I've got a call from the recruiter to now I'm sitting down with the hiring manager. How many people would you say you've helped with that?
Yeah, definitely. It's over the 100 for sure, just throughout. my career, because I even work with entry levels to executive levels, but the sweet spot for me is that mid level professional, for someone who may have been in their role a number of years and don't know the landscape right now on how to interview. So they're a little uh, new getting back into the water, into the interview game. And so making sure I break down some of the disbeliefs, and some of the, for folks who stand on their laurels thinking it's just credibility and their resume that's going to get them through the door, right? We're in a complete, this, Jamila, we're in a completely different landscape now. But yeah, definitely well over 100 folks that I had to, and had the pleasure of working with in that kind of framework, and teaching them how to really take it from an interrogation to a conversation, and being able to show value.
And if you had to attribute the success ratio for that person from an interview standpoint, if they've got an interview, how many of them are landing those job offers? If you had to put a
Yeah,
percentage
if
to it.
I would have to look back at that data, but I would tell you probably around a good 85, maybe 80 to 85%.
Mm,
And that's across, right, across the time, I've been coaching. And
yeah,
so that's been good. And again, that's from entry level up to, executive levels. And they come to me for different reasons, whether it's a
yeah.
full coaching or it's just quick interview spots. But I've always give them like, hey, interview is always going to be part of the process, no matter where they're at, right? And so it's giving them an understanding of different levels, different conversations, because as the audience changes, the language change. And so how do I frame that for you, and customize it for you, so you can have success, through the transition of the multiple interview steps you're going to go through. But yeah, I would say short answer is probably 80 to 85.
So if you're interviewing, you're listening, you're watching, and you're interviewing, and you're getting to the interview, which I think is gold. I feel, you know, pretty confident if I can get a coaching client to the interview process, they're going to experience that 80 to 90% success ratio and get a job offer, right? May not be that,
Correct.
and
Correct.
honestly, sometimes it's not even that specific job, but they're so good that they're look at them for another position. That happens a lot too. So when you think about that, to me, it sounds like the secret sauce because then I hear from other people that can't even get the interview. All right, so let's
Yeah,
back
you
up
know
a
what?
step.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Say what you're gonna say.
I would say, here's the silver bullet to it, because as candidates develop, unfortunately, hiring managers don't. So as the candidate gets better in their skill set, their communication style, their ability to control the conversation, take it over, lead with value, unfortunately, we have tons and tons of hiring managers that are not upgrading their skills. And so, in essence, it can become easier. Now, you have some out there that are just phenomenal because they've been doing it for a long time, meaning the hiring manager, and they know how to ask questions, and really dissect the conversation. But if you can get your skills up to that level, whatever that is, and I think coming through folks like yourself and myself, we can get you to that level, you will dominate in an interview process, unless your nerves just become unraveled. And we go through that as well, right? Through multiple coaching calls, and role plays. But that's where, I don't hear too many people talk about, right? We're upgrading the job seeker, but what I do hear is that the managers that are doing the interviews, they're not being upgraded, and so they're coming with antiquated processes, and you're looking even more like a rock star, which you are, but you're just blowing them out the water because you have it all together, and they're just like, whoa, Jamila just pretty much told me what she's about to accomplish in the first 90 days, 6 months to a year. I'm about to take a vacation because I know she has it. She's about to come here and put me on vacation. So I love it. And so
Right.
that's where a lot of missing gaps are, which it can make it easy for us coaches, to go in here and have high success rates and execute with the right people.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I think for anyone that's listening and whether it's us or someone else, you want to with someone that can help you turn these opportunities into liquid gold. And the reason why I call it liquid gold is because the more job offers you're able to land, the more leverage you have, right? As you move to the negotiation process. But I want to back up a step because there's a lot of people. I heard it in a room that I did with Bez on LinkedIn yesterday, where they were looking to put in roughly, I think it was. close to 200 applications. They were going to apply for about 200 jobs over the course of about 3 to 4 days.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm a volume person. You know, I played basketball, so I know I got to shoot 200 free throws a day. I got to make so many. Like, I get that part, and I'm with it. But they asked a question about customizing your resume for all those jobs, and I asked the question, what do you want? Do you want to just hit that number, or do you actually want to get interviews? Because if you just want to hit the number, go for it. But if you want to then take that time and get as many interviews as possible, then you're going to want to make sure you customize those resumes and maybe take the number down. So I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on helping someone get pat like get the interview? Because so many people are qualified and they're not getting the interview.
Yeah, I will. What I'll do is bring your analogy in to make it a little clearer
Yeah,
too. And I love the basketball analogy. So if you're taking 200 shots to make sure when it comes game time, it's a right. The muscle reacts the same way. It's already built in. But if you're applying to 200 jobs, and that sounds like that someone said that literally that they're going to apply for 200 jobs. Here's the big difference: the basket never changes, right? The basket you're shooting at, the net, it does not change from one to 200. The culture, the job, the descriptions change. They're changed. There's no way you're qualified for 200 jobs. There is no way you like 200 different companies.
that's
That's
good.
impossible, right? So what you're doing is watering down. What's happening is mentally you're getting drained, frustrated, and anxiety is setting in. So you're just clicking apply, 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 whether you're manually doing it or you have AI doing it for you. There's no way they're all the same. There's no way you're getting excited over 200 jobs. That's impossible. So when it comes time for game time, you probably don't even know. You're so frazzled and thinking, oh, application 145 has responded. You got to remember what that was, go back through it, and you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't really what I thought. Oh, the salary. Oh, I forgot. You're forgetting all these things. It's too many. So to your point, Jamila, absolutely customizing the resume, scaling the quantity down so it's quality, but you also have to add additional things to it. Just like in basketball, you're shooting 200 shots, but maybe your coach says, hey, 50 shoot with your left hand, or you're doing jump shots, you're doing layups. All right, 50 with the right hand, 50 with the left hand. What they're telling you is you have to have some kind of alternative opportunity for yourself. So I would say job seekers create more additional opportunities, from personal branding to making sure all your ducks are in a row, from LinkedIn, things like that, your network, etc. All the things you hear coaches like us talk about. So this way you're not applying to 200. Maybe you're applying to 60, 50, whatever that is. And you have 200 follow-ups, right? To those, and I'm being facetious, but your follow-up game is stronger to break through the walls and leveraging your network and things like that. So that's my opinion on that. I think for hopefully that person is not pumping out 200 resumes in that short of time, because there's just no way they're qualified or really like 200 jobs. I don't think that's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned follow-up game. Let's touch on that a little bit. What should that follow-up game look like throughout the different stages of the process? What are your best practices that you share with your clients?
So I would say be creative as possible. What I love about the marketing and agency space, they get super creative. I don't care if it's an idea you got from watching a movie. Be super creative in your approach, right? And so that's where it becomes, though, you're learning more about the organization. So your follow up can be a little bit unique and it's different, especially if you've gotten through the recruiter. So I'll say, let's say for this scenario base, you've gotten through the recruiter and your follow up is directly with the hiring manager. It's really going to take you to be intentively um, in your memory as well as your listening skills to really draw back from what that conversation was. And it's almost like a drip campaign. You got to follow up with something unique each time you do it to where you make sense. But what I always did in my past is I followed up with a solution in the communication, not just "How you doing, Mrs. Brown? This is Orlando following up on this such and such position. I know it's this and that, but love to hear more. If my next steps, and I'm still interested in the opportunity." No, it's more like, "Hey, Mrs. Brown, love the conversation we had. I did remember that you also mentioned XYZ. And one idea that I thought about that helped me in my previous organization is I did this, 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 and this. Hopefully that's something you can utilize whether I'm a candidate for the role or not, but would love to peel that back a little bit more in the next conversation with you." You just never know what's going to happen. Again, it shows that you're thinking forward. You're still providing solutions, and that's always going to be a seed that's continued to be planted in that. So the creativity in the solutions-driven type of follow-up is stronger than just a standard follow-up and finding out where do you sit in the process.
Yeah.
That's not going to jog their memory too much. You showing something and adding value in the email, whether it's through LinkedIn or their work email, will hit a little bit harder when they like, "Oh yeah, I remember talking to Jamila. Yeah, she did. Yeah, let's unpack because that was interesting. Let's do a panel so we can wrap this up a little bit faster." You just never know what's happening behind the scenes because they don't want to lose quality candidates.
What would you put in that subject line on an email like that? Because I know that's a huge part. Like before they can
hmm
even open up the email, whether or not I'm going to be anxious to open up the email is huge. So, what would you put in that subject line as well so it doesn't feel so generic?
I would get real bold and put solving your XYZ fill in the blanks problem.
Mm,
And they're like, "Solving my problem? What are you talking? Who's this?" Oh,
right,
and then you just have it poured out in there. Still, you're not writing a thesis. You're
right.
being straight to the point. You're being super personable, and a little bit with the humility to say, "Hey, I'm just going to add value whether you select me or not." Because at some point, I think you're going to want to know what else I can bring to the table. I want you to, if not, call me back for the opportunity to say at some point, change their mind and say, "Hey, we filled it internally, but Jamila, I think you'd be a great role. A friend of mine in this company is looking for a similar role. Let me connect you to, because I
Right.
think what you have is a great fit." But again, like I said, unfortunately, we had to go with an internal employee, or we went with an internal employee. But let me add, let me be a little referral for you. You just never know. You're building relationships, and so
Right.
they're more accepting of at least following back up, right? And then you can go in for the ask, be like, "Hey, no worries. If anyone in your network is looking for someone in my similar skill set, please feel free to throw my name in the hat. I would love an opportunity to work for someone who you think is a good fit for me that comes with your recommendation."
Boom.
Now that person's again is an advocate for you.
Yep. So you got a great subject line to catch their attention because
hmm
I'm here to solve your problems. And then
Correct.
you mentioned drip campaign, which I'm gonna steal that from you because I like that phrase for it. But how many emails would you send in those in the follow up? Let's say it's the average job it takes 2 months to 6 months to fill. But what would you say is a good amount in between two interviews?
So I would say on average, it depends on the response, right?
Mhm.
So if you're not getting any response, let's say that's the scenario, right? I would say one a week or one every 10 days.
Okay.
But it'll come down to the content you're putting in that. So one or two things is going to happen, right? I think more so or not, whether it's 51% to 49%, the more stronger that email is, they're going to respond with whether, "Hey, we're still updating, we're still going through interviews. You got confirmation where the status is," or, "Hey, we did go with another candidate." Your goal is to close it out either way. The goal is to get the job, but you want some kind of response. But I think the more craftier you are, the more genuine and the more unique your message is, it's going to force a response because it's going to trigger. And a lot of folks don't talk about that. There's going to be a trigger of an emotional thing to be like, "Oh, yeah, let me get back to Jamila," because you just never know. I would hate to ghost her because like these emails are incredible. I got to at least say where we are. Don't know. I'll get back to you, but you need them to respond. And so, again, get away from the standard communications. of just checking your status and get to where it's going to trigger them to respond a little bit more, more genuine and more authentically, right? They may expose something in that response to you that you can use to follow back up with again. You never know.
More intel. That's incredible. So you broken down the interview process, having your 90-day plan crafted with some incredible intel from the recruiter if you've gotten that far. Then we backed it up a step and talked about how to get in the door, right? And then in between interviews as well. Incredible, incredible advice. Absolute masterclass that you've put on here for the audience today. So I appreciate you, number one. And as we wrap up, I always like to ask our guests for their final 5 words. So if you made it to this point, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or you're on YouTube, if you've made it to this point, these are the final 5 words that you want to write down that Orlando's going to leave us with. Now, again, no pressure if you go to 6 or drop to 4, but what would you want people to remember about our conversation today?
Great question. So it's going to be four, and I would tell you it's two different phrases. One is action has no season, and the other one is take immediate massive action. So it's all about just taking action. The more you sit and rest, that's just time for distractions to come in and put you in a state of pause and immobility, if that's even a word, or lack of mobility. You need to move forward no matter what and press your way through. So action has no season. Take immediate massive action.
I love that, Orlando, and thank you so much for coming on the show and blessing the audience with all of your wisdom over the years. And of course, I'm going to make sure I link Orlando's profile on LinkedIn so you can connect with them, continue the conversation. If you have additional questions, be sure to reach out to him. You're also an author, so I want to make sure we link his book as well. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a partner of mine, we collaborated on a career accelerator planner. So it's a planner for job seekers to track their performance, their value, and their worth all in one document. So we
Mhm.
have it in hardcover, or should I say soft cover, but also in a fillable PDF. So as you're going through your work year, right, and it come time for evaluations, promotions, you've documented your work. And so it's a prompted book that walks you through selected questions so you know what to put in there. And so when it comes time to those conversations, you can say, this is what I've done. This is the outcome. These are my ideas. This is what it impacted. And so it's all documented for you to track for the year because no one else is going to track it. And it's our responsibility to do so.
Excellent. Ownership. So appreciate you, Orlando. And until next time, you all have a wonderful day, and I love you.